Let me just tell you about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president.
I went to America because firstly, the president invited me, and secondly, because there was work to be done, especially considering that the US-Hungarian relations are particularly bad in today's political world. Despite being allies, I tried to mend this relationship. So I went to America to restore the Hungarian-American political friendship. It's just not possible with the current administration. There's a reason for this. There's a warmongering administration currently in Washington. Democrats hold the presidency and they are committed to war. We, on the other hand, are a peace-loving government. So we're not all about the same thing. In contrast, President Trump was a president of peace. You see, with him, with him, there's no bait and switch. Since he has already served as president, thus we know exactly what will happen. Indeed, he ended wars during his first 4 years in office. Yeah, he was the first leader in a long time to not start any wars during his tenure. So we know from his presidential actions that he is a man of peace, and he's not hesitant to share his opinion now either. He's made it clear that his goal is to create peace in the Russia-Ukraine war. We want nothing more than peace, an immediate ceasefire. We need a ceasefire in this seemingly endless war as soon as possible. I don't see anyone as determined and strong who could achieve this, like Donald Trump.
How well does Donald Trump understand Hungary's position or concept initially in the Hungary-Russia-Ukraine conflict, considering, of course, the Carpathian Hungarians, as well as our geographical situation? How well does he grasp that it's in our fundamental interest, it's vital for us to have peace in our neighborhood?
Americans generally don't know much about European culture and history in detail. They are, of course, educated and have some knowledge about the world and Europe as well. Americans do understand enough to realize that we are neighboring countries, and if there is a war in your neighbor's land, it's bad for you. I could also say that since Americans are business-minded, they understand very well that the value of your property, your house, diminishes if there's quarreling or war in your neighborhood. That's as far as they get. So they know that for our own sake, putting aside moral considerations and geopolitical views, we should be invested in peace out of pure national interest, and therefore they can count on us to help create peace. Even based on our own natural national interests, we need to be invested in peace, and for this reason they can count on us to be peacemakers.
Just a few days ago at the Antalya Diplomatic Forum, they said that if Donald Trump came back, he would end the war. It made me wonder how. What does he know that others don't? And yesterday the German newspaper Bild also wrote that Trump has a secret plan to end the war. Did they discuss any details about
Indeed.
that?
There are quite detailed plans on how to end the war, but I am not authorized to speak about the plan of the forthcoming American president. Please kindly ask him about that. What I can say is that his plans align with the interests of Hungary.
Dante writes that the hottest place in purgatory is reserved for those who maintained their neutrality during times of moral crisis. You clearly took a stand with the conservative Trumpian politics. So are we living in times when that's necessary?
We're in a unique situation, aren't we? Being seen by the Americans. Not only did I meet with the president, but I also gave a lecture at the Heritage Foundation. This is the institute that writes President Trump's program, so the detailed professional program. This foundation prepares it for the president, supplying him with people for the potential American administration as well. And in this place, Hungary holds a distinguished position. It's quite surprising from our perspective, since we are only a country of 10 million and a nation of 15 million, compared to their nearly 400 million people. Our army versus theirs, their economic prowess and the like. Normally it would make sense for us to watch them, to learn from them, but now the situation is exactly the opposite. So today in America they see Hungary as a special place, a place that's different from the rest. And they see it as if Europe today is a vast liberal, progressive liberal ocean. And in that there is an island. There's just this one island, that's Hungary, trying to live, think and act differently, let's say in their words, pursuing conservative politics. And we don't just talk about it. Unlike how they often do in America, we actually do it, which is why we're held in such high regard in the United States today, because we've done things they'd also like to do but can't. It sounds strange to us because these things come naturally to us. It's like breathing to us. But over there, these things are missing and their value is immense. For instance, take public safety. That's why Hungary is respected today in the United States, because it's considered the safest country in Europe. Because here we don't speak against the police like in America. We don't talk about criminals' rights, but rather about the rights of victims and the police. We're increasing the number of police officers, we're tightening the criminal code, and we've been restoring order since 2010. We've restored public order to the extent that we're recognized by everyone as the safest country in Europe. In America, that's an amazing thing. To us, it's natural. Or take migration, for instance. They also want to stop migration, but they just can't. The current president doesn't even want to. And even when President Trump wanted to, he found it difficult. So Hungary is seen as a plus in Europe, where they say that migration is a dangerous thing. Illegal border crossing is a criminal offense. You have no right. If you cross into Hungary illegally, you're not allowed to stay, and we'll send you back. You can't apply for asylum here if you've entered the country illegally. Instead, you must do so at the Hungarian embassy. You'll have to wait outside, and if we say you can come, or if we say you can't, then you must accept that decision. But until then, you can't enter. And we have a fence, protected by police and soldiers. That's something they'd want in America, where millions of illegal immigrants are coming in. A huge problem there. Over here, it's a solved issue. It's interesting that there's a country in Europe where the whole of Europe thinks about migration as something important with a positive impact. Yet there's one country that disagrees and actually manages to do so. The Americans appreciate, understand and value these things. This also applies to family. So, the fact that Hungary stands up for family values while everyone is talking about such elemental foolishness across Western Europe and in the Constitution.
We protect family values. This earns respect in America. We are in a better position in terms of recognition and authority than we think we need to be. It's undeniable that there has never been such agreement as a superpower, as was just referred to, specifically between the political philosophies of America and Hungary, and the fact that there is an overlap between American conservative and Hungarian conservative policies is also clearly visible. You've mentioned topics that were discussed. What else came up in the conversation? What else came up in this regard?
There's one more thing that's worth doing. Americans respect performance and experience. I've been around long enough in this field, and I've personally met every American president since Senior George Bush. I knew each one of them and had some sort of relationship with each of their policies, all the way from Bush through to the current Democratic administration. If not elsewhere, we regularly meet at the NATO summits. The American Republicans understand that we are currently going through a very difficult period in US-Hungarian relations because the American administration expects things from Hungary that we do not want and cannot deliver. For example, they expect us to join the war, but we don't want to get involved in the war. They expect us to say what they say, that migration is a good thing, just needs to be managed properly. But we think it's a bad thing and shouldn't be managed at all. They expect us to support LGBTQ rights and this whole chaotic spectrum of coexistence forms that they cherish. But we believe in the family. And there are still a few such strong differences of opinion. And the current US administration has concluded that they can't come to terms with us. So the only solution they see is to get rid of us. And that's why the current American administration is openly funding the left-wing opposition, left-wing journalists, left-wing media, and left-wing civil organizations, strengthening them in order to achieve a change in government. This, of course, damages the relationship. So it's difficult because we are allies, not servants. But Republicans sense that things are not right this way. And there's an economic cost to it because Hungary has great economic potential and our economic cooperation is well established. but the current political relations aren't conducive to economic cooperation. So another extremely important topic with President Trump was how to give the American-Hungarian economic partnership a new and significant boost.
And since you mentioned Biden, they didn't meet this time, although at the recent NATO summit, yes, Biden said about their recent meeting at one of his own campaign events, and I quote, Viktor Orban made it clear that he does not believe in democracy and expects that he can create a dictatorship. This was reported by the AFP news agency. Was such a statement made?
Well, you see, the current American president's speeches shouldn't be overvalued when it comes to accuracy.
And since we just talked about Western Europe or Europe, that strong support for Trump, whether it's yours or Hungary's, significantly differs from the way European leaders talk about Trump or make statements about him. When they talk about Trump or comment on him, from what I read in the Western European press, I get the feeling that this was pouring oil on the fire, especially in your case. What do you think about that?
The point is, today the United States Democratic Administration, the leadership of the European Union, and the leaders of the biggest member states of the EU are all in sync. They are pro-war governments. Donald Trump favors peace. Hungary favors peace. At the core of it all, this is the difference that lies beneath. They dress it up, put a spin on it, cloak it in a veneer of democracy, claiming it's the real deal when everyone knows that's not the case. Winning elections in Hungary is incredibly tough. There are intense political battles, which just goes to show that democracy is alive and well.
Hungary is among those NATO countries when it comes to the defense spending at 2% of GDP. That's about 1/3 of the NATO countries that actually meet this target.
We are 80 out of the 30.
This was clearly discussed as well, considering that even during his presidency, Trump was quite critical of the countries that do not meet this commitment.
It's about more than just criticism. He has a very clear vision that's hard to disagree with. So he says this. First off, he won't give a single cent to the Ukraine-Russia war. This is why the war will come to an end. Obviously, Ukraine cannot stand on its own. If the Americans stop providing money and weapons, and if they don't receive support from the Europeans, then this war is over. And if the Americans don't provide funds, the Europeans alone are incapable of financing this war. And then the war is over. President Trump is not currently in office, but his party is in power today. In Congress, they are blocking the Democrats from being able to provide money for the war. And the president says, Mr. Trump states that if he returns, he won't make such an initiative. He won't give a single penny. And with that, the war will end. As for how and under what circumstances to negotiate peace following a ceasefire, and how to create a stable, predictable, and secure Europe, that's another matter. But first, we need to make peace. And he's got the means to do it. He also says that he doesn't want to finance European security in the place of Europeans. Well, if Europeans are afraid of the Russians or just want a high level of security, then they should pay for it. Either build their own armies, their own equipment, or if they're using the Americans for this, they should pay the Americans the price, the cost of security. So he speaks straightforwardly and clearly. I've heard him speak on this at the NATO summit during his presidency that began in 2016, where he made it perfectly clear. He also told us it's not easy for Hungary to come up with that money. What we're spending today on security and armaments needs to be acknowledged as part of a new era of rearmament in Europe. The Americans aren't going to foot the bills for our security. Each of us, every European country, has to bear its own share of the cost. It's time to pay up. We need, as I was said, to have our own military, our own resources, and we must be capable of defending our homeland or contributing to a coalition with shared military capabilities. Spending huge amounts of money on the military is a heavy burden. There could be other uses for those funds. For a while, even Hungary was doing this, quietly spending far less than what our security really cost. We have quietly spent much less than what the actual cost of our security was. But that period is over. The Ukrainian-Russian war has proven that we can't skimp on this anymore. Security must be established, and it comes with a cost that has to be paid from the Hungarian budget. It's not an easy task, but I think that the Americans are right from their point of view. They are right. From our perspective, we need to ensure our own security. which we have to create ourselves. Of course, we have our alliances.
Actually, no one else has. This was the third time they met with Trump. You visited him all three times as the Prime Minister of Hungary, first while he was president, then as the former president, and now potentially as the future president. What's your personal impression? How was this meeting different, considering it was at his home? How friendly was it?
This was indeed a family invitation as well. So I also visited the family's home. You know, as a Slovenian, the First Lady says to Mr. President, it's actually a great help for us because Slovenia is right next to Hungary. So the president has more knowledge about this world we live in than what's generally known by presidents. The First Lady's father was there too, by the way. We also met with a good old Slovenian man. So I believe what we see and what the reality is, they are not far apart from each other. So the president lives as he is, and his family is just like they are in reality. He's quite the showman, an American one. After all, we're talking about a legend here. We are talking about a legend, not just a politician. So what makes Donald Trump unique compared to other presidents is that he was a legend even before he took office. With little cameos in movies, a giant real estate tycoon, so he's a legend, and the whole world that surrounds him. But at the center of this legend is a real person, a real couple who live in love, have been together for a long time. And fortunately, one half of the couple is probably coming closer to us here in Central Europe, among us.
The US presidential election will be in November, and a lot can happen before then. They've tried and will no doubt try to prevent Trump's election with, let's say, both conventional and questionable tactics. Did you discuss how real this threat is, and overall, how do you see the campaign?
We talked about the campaign, of course, but I have my own opinion on this, about this whole phenomenon, to prevent the former president of the United States from running as a candidate. From this perspective, from Central Europe, where after all there was a long era of communist dictatorship and Soviet occupation, the tactics of not letting someone run for office feel more like they belong to a dictatorship. We're not talking about something that is worthy of American democracy, but in my opinion, this could actually be a good thing. I have noticed, and I've been in this game for quite a while, if I may put it that way, that you can only win if you've really struggled for it. And let me tell you, I've struggled tremendously, because what he's going through is almost unprecedented. So he's not going to be handed this victory as a gift. He will have to suffer for it, and he will claim it. I'm very confident that someone who has been through such an ordeal, such a trial, to be shut down, prosecuted, stripped of their wealth, and excluded from running, but still fights on, in the end, does run. It's like in Hungarian foothills. In the end, they will triumph. Going through such a trial by fire, facing attempts to incarcerate them, to bring them to court, to strip them of their wealth, to block their candidacy, yet they still fight on. And in the end, they do run. This is like something out of a Hungarian folktale, where in the end, the hero prevails.
If the president were to face difficulties, what would that imply for American-Hungarian relations?
Well, we've discussed politics and peace, and how Hungary is respected for its achievements, but it also means a lot from an economic standpoint. In Hungary today, there are American investments worth 9 billion euros, and the volume of our trade, the commercial trade between the two countries, is roughly 9 billion. By the way, we make a profit of about 3 billion euros from it. So we benefit from the US-Hungarian relations. Fortunately, the president is preoccupied with China, where they have even more to lose. So I think this little 3 billion euros will continue to fit into the US-Hungarian relations in the future. It's important to us. There are significant American companies here which have strengthened during his term. Now, with the current American administration having repealed the double taxation law and failing to adopt a new one, this poses a serious obstacle to strengthening our relations. The law was revoked, and no new one was adopted. So this now poses a serious obstacle. To strengthen our relations, I told the president that although it will take quite a few years, doubling this 9 billion in investment and trade volume is a realistic goal. We are capable of doubling it. It would mean a lot to the Hungarian economy if the United States, as an ally and friend, also considered Hungary a prime target for economic investment. On that, the Hungarian economy and therefore the Hungarian people stand to gain a lot.
If not Trump, but let's say Biden becomes the president, what would that mean, considering you essentially rooted for the rival president?
that would be better.
You just mentioned China. It has often been said that Hungary could be a bridge between East and West. How much did this come up? How beneficial was it?
At the Washington Mara Heritage Foundation, this was a serious matter.
I'm interested.
Interestingly, it seems that in Hungary, the structure of foreign investments is such that the Germans have put in 25 billion euros so far. Among them, the Chinese have invested slightly less than 9 billion, and the South Koreans 6 billion. They are the largest investors. So today, Chinese and American investments in Hungary are balanced. The Chinese are on the rise, while the Americans have plateaued. Therefore, if America wants to keep up with China, it has to increase its investments in Hungary. Moreover, President Donald Trump, before losing the election, was very close to reaching a comprehensive trade agreement with the Chinese. Before losing the election, he was very close to finalizing a major comprehensive trade agreement with the Chinese. Even after such long and tough negotiations, the opportunity still exists. And the fact that in Hungary, German, Chinese, South Korean and American capital can all cooperate within one economy, each achieving their goals, and at the same time we Hungarians also benefit, is a situation worth maintaining. We just need to increase the scale so that our prosperity also grows. Thank you as well.
Thank you very much. I'll let you go now, Prime Minister. Thanks for the chat.
Thank you as well.